Good afternoon and welcome to Steppenwolf Theater's 11th annual Women in the Arts event. I'm Anna Shapiro, Artistic Director and Ensemble member, and I'm really stoked to be joined by our Executive Director, Brooke Flanagan, and we are thrilled to be coming to you from our new Arts and Education Center here on our campus. Today, we celebrate two incredible women, incredible artists, Sherry Lansing and Annette Bening, and their incredible host, our ensemble member and my girlfriend, Carrie Coon.
Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here. At the beginning of the pandemic, we met with you at Pants Optional Gala, and now we're bookending it with Women in the Arts. It has been an impossible, unimaginable 15 months for all of us. The forced closure of our theaters, the cessation of life. We have been pulled apart as a society, and we can't wait to welcome you back to Steppenwolf and open this amazing facility this fall. But before we do, today we have a few of our young adult council members who are going to give you a behind-the-scenes tour.
Before that, I just want to say, on behalf of Brooke and myself, thank you to our staff, our ensemble, our trustees, and our donors for getting us through this impossible 15 months. And we cannot wait to welcome you back in person to the new Steppenwolf campus in the fall. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Vicky.
And I'm Kristen.
And we're both members of Steppenwolf's Young Adult Council,
which is an after-school program for teens like us who want to know anything and everything there is to know about theater.
Steppenwolf Education is committed to ensuring that every teen from every neighborhood in Chicago is welcome here.
It doesn't matter if you consider yourself a die-hard theater nerd, like me, or someone who just wants to learn something new.
Here at Steppenwolf, we say, just bring yourself.
And now we have a brand new home, the Loft, the 4th floor of our new Arts and Education Center, where we're broadcasting to you from right now.
Well, kind of.
Vicky, shh, it's the magic of theater.
Right. Where we're broadcasting from right now. The Loft is a dedicated space for teens to come together to learn about, explore, and create theater.
We have 3 rooms. The first is the Learner Lab, a classroom where students from different schools can come together in new ways.
Second, the Reflection Gallery, where teens can come after school and find a safe space to collaborate together or just hang out.
And finally, the room we're in right now, the Maker Studio, where we plan to host teen workshops and parties for fellow theater enthusiasts.
The Loft will allow us to expand the work we already do for teens throughout the city, taking our reach from 20,000 to 30,000 teens served each year.
Thank you for supporting Steppenwolf Education. Your support makes all of this possible.
Thank you.
Wow, it's really amazing to see that. That's actually the first I've seen of the inside of the building. I haven't actually been there in person yet, and it's really moving to see all the progress that we've made. So thank you again to our donors and to our staff who've made this possible. I really wasn't sure if we'd make it, and here we are. Welcome to the Women in the Arts Luncheon. I wish we could all be together right now, but it looks like hopefully next year that will be true. I'm ensemble member Carrie Coon, and I'm thrilled to be here to lead a conversation between two women that I happen to know and deeply admire, Annette Bening and Sherry Lansing. But first, let me please thank our dedicated sponsors, our co-chairs, Ann and Don Phillips, Carrie and Michael Sachs, and Helen Zell, as well as our sponsors, the All-State Foundation, Exelon, Grosvenor Capital Management, and Northern Trust. We are humbled by your generosity, and we really wouldn't be here without you, truly. We hope that you will consider making a gift to these indispensable programs by texting WIA to 76278. We're hoping to raise about $250,000 today, and I'm pleased to report we're at about $239,000 right now. So we're very close. So any dollar counts. Your gift supports the growth of these impactful education programs that strengthen our communities and our relationship to the youth in our city. And so we thank you again for the support of our theater. We wouldn't have made it through this time without you, and we're so grateful. And now I am honored to welcome, I hope I can say my friends, Annette Bening and Sherry Lansing this afternoon. Before we dive in, let's first take a look at Annette Bening's storied career. Please watch.
I will sell this house today. Are you a real estate agent?
Yeah.
Don't have any plants out here.
What do you call this? Is this not a plant?
When you portray real estate agents as crazy...
Oh, I don't know if she was crazy.
You Benning, shut up!
I, too, am a real estate agent.
Well, why didn't you say so before?
Because your movies made me believe that was something to be ashamed of.
I looked, and believe me, brother, I kissed a lot of fucking frogs. And you're my prince.
Don't cry. It'll only make you more miserable. I'll tell you what I think happened. Huh? Sir Philip got a little fresh with you, didn't he? And you couldn't resist. It's rather difficult to get fresh when you have a cold. What did he say? Please make an old man happy. Not Isabel.
Annette Bening, being Beulah.
I love my work. I love what I do, and I appreciate this very much.
The way you were staring at me, I thought you were going to ask me for something a little more exciting.
Like what?
Use your imagination.
I'm using it.
Let me know when you're finished.
I've been thinking this way. If he comes back...
What do you mean, if? He's coming back.
I think if you sit him down and you explain yourself. I mean, you ought to make it clear that you know you did a terrible thing. I mean, if he could see that you realize what you did, you see.
Annette Bening, isn't she lovely? Never mind, Sybil. Just remember, all's fair in war and... Oh, hell, the word escapes me.
Thank you so much, Annette. That was really inspiring to see that. And now for an inside look at the rise of Sherry Lansing in Hollywood. Let's watch.
And finally, it all comes down to this.
And the Oscar for Best Picture.
And the Oscar goes. And the Oscar goes to. And the Oscar goes to.
Forrest Gump, Braveheart.
Titanic.
Thanks to the woman who was playing the leading role at the studio that produced it.
You're the head of Paramount.
Sherry Lansing has a Hollywood story all her own.
Sherry Lansing went on to change Hollywood when she became the first woman to run a major movie studio.
I saw that film could be about something, but also change the way you think.
Sherry came to Hollywood to pursue a career in acting, but she found her true calling behind the scenes.
I always looked for two things in a screenplay. People you could root for.
But they'll never take our freedom!
I decided to go for a little run.
I want those motherfuckers put away forever.
And second is you had to be engaged emotionally.
I'm the king of the world!
But for all of her achievements, Sherry always made time to give back to the community.
She's raised hundreds of millions of dollars for causes including education and cancer research.
I get to be associated with Sherry Lansing, the quintessential powerhouse in a power suit.
I have to say, as a proud 75-year-old woman, and I am a proud 75-year-old woman, I have watched all of you. This is our time, and you made it happen.
I mean, I'd also like to thank
Sherry
Lansing. Sherry Lansing.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sherry Lansing.
extraordinary. That's just extraordinary. Thank you both so much for being with us today. We're so grateful to you. Before we move on to our conversation, I'd just like to take time to thank Donna La Pietra and Curtis Productions, who were kind enough to assemble those overview videos that we had the pleasure of enjoying. And now, I promise, ladies, this will start off kind of generic, but I'll get more specific with you in a minute. Okay, so Sherry, you're a Chicago native. You go out to LA to become an actress, and you end up as a producer. When did you realize, or how did you realize that your future was in producing and sort of leave behind that other dream?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how delighted I am to be here on behalf of Steppenwolf. I love the work that you do, and I am a very, very proud Chicago native, and I love sharing this time with Carrie and Annette, two women that I really, really admire. So it's an honor to be here, and to all of my friends in Chicago, hi. So the reason I switched is I had absolutely no talent. So let me just say that. I mean, the world did not lose anything when I stopped being an actress. I was extremely uncomfortable as an actress. I wasn't myself. I didn't have the talent. The truth is, when I was growing up, and I saw in the video, which I've never seen before, so thank you for doing that special video for this event. I saw in the video that you said I was a proud 75-year-old. Now I'm a proud 77-year-old. So let me just say that when I was growing up, and I know that to the younger people in the audience, it's going to sound like I came from another planet. But when I was growing up, the careers available to women were teacher or nurse, two wonderful careers. And so when I looked at the movie industry, I couldn't study to be in the film industry. There weren't courses at the time. Now, of course, it's an acceptable thing in all schools, in all colleges, even in some high schools. So I just loved the movies. I used to get lost in the double feature at the Hamilton and Jeffrey Theater, anyone who still remembers that from the South Side of Chicago. And I wanted to be part of the business, and all I thought you could do was act. That's all I knew. So fortunately, I was cast very early with a lack of talent. And I looked around at the set and I saw how uncomfortable I was and how this wasn't for me. But I saw all these other careers that were available for me. So that's when I started reading scripts for $5 an hour and began my career in the movie business, and felt instantly at home when I started to read scripts. I felt, wow, this is something I love and something I can do.
That's amazing. Sherry's biography is great. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Annette, I hope you write one. Annette, we all have memories of seeing that video. It's so fun to watch your career unfold in that video, because we all have our favorite memories of your performances over the years. And I'm wondering if you were one of those kids who knew you wanted to be an actor, or if there was a moment where it became really clear to you that this was it.
Well, thank you. God, thank you for the video. Thanks for inviting me, and for what Sherry just said about how she got interested in acting, because I think it is a pathway for a lot of people into other professions. And I think that's why I feel so strongly that it has to be respected when young people are interested in acting, because often it's the springboard and it takes you where you should be going. I grew up in San Diego, and I was taken to the Old Globe Theater, which is San Diego's regional nonprofit, like Steppenwolf is in Chicago. And my 9th grade teacher took us to see Shakespeare. And there was something that happened in that moment for me. I'd never seen a play. And there was something about the vitality of the experience, the live experience of the people and on the stage, their gravity, their silliness, their passion, the spit, the sweat, the aliveness of it. And then that combined with this incredible intellectual heft, combined with the emotional guts. And that to me is the essence of dramatic art. So I sort of got interested then. I had a really great high school drama teacher who was an actress herself, who was a bit of a character and a little bit brilliant. And then I just sort of plodded my way along. I went to community college, and I just spoke to my professor, who's now in his 90s, who was one of the teachers that I had in community college. I went to San Francisco State, which I'm very proud of. did my stuff there at a theater degree, because just like those students in the video at the beginning, I felt like, oh no, I'm them, but I'm 63, but I'm them. Inside, I feel that same, like, interest, love. It's where the search has always been. So then I got to go to the American Conservatory Theater, and that for me was just such a gift, because I got to train, which I really needed, and then eventually got to be part of a repertory company. You all have this beautiful ensemble at Steppenwolf that we all respect so much. And at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, they had a repertory company. That was my dream. And so not only did I get to do plays, but we got to do that with this group of people, this core group of people and we did classics and we did modern plays and we did all kinds of different stuff. And that was really where my heart was. And when I started was there, and it still is, but it's gone other places as well.
Right. I relate to so much of that story. I've been doing my research on you, and I was surprised how many parallels there were in our trajectories in a way. But anyway, moving on. Sherry, I won't ask you to condense your rise to becoming the first ever woman to lead a major studio when you were promoted to the head of Fox in 1980. But I do have a more specific question about that. In my own career, I have found that there were times in my life where experiences unfolded the way they should because I was too naive to be afraid. Like I didn't know enough. And I feel like there's the role that guilelessness had played in the unfolding is really kind of interesting. But I also know that you were operating in a man's world, and there was also a degree of shrewdness that was required of you. And in your biography, you speak so candidly about not having relationships with the women, the very few women who were around you, because, like, to boil it down, there was only room for one. And so the promotion of one woman meant that somebody else was either going to get axed or fall away. And so I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that balance between that kind of naivete or guilelessness and the shrewdness that was required to operate in the world that you were in.
So that's a great question, and it's a complicated answer. So first of all, I love movies. And by movies now, I mean all forms of films, entertainment, television, and I also love theater. And that's what drove me. The work is what drove me. So though there was a tremendous amount of prejudice or a tremendous amount of inequality, all that I really concentrated on was the work. I got up every day, and I kind of felt that what was going on that wasn't involving making a movie because I was running a studio or because I was producing, and that was my role, I just was chatter. And I just blocked it out. I mean, I didn't read the newspapers, the gossip columns or whatever people read. I didn't, today it would be, I wouldn't go on Twitter, and I actually still don't. So I'm not saying that's good, I just don't. And so all I did was concentrate on the work, and the thrill of being associated with a movie that touched people's lives was what kept me going. You said something very interesting. I didn't have any mentors because there weren't any women ahead of me. So my mentor was someone like Gloria Steinem or Betty Friedan, someone that was marching for equal rights, and my mother, who was my first role model, who had a career after my father died. She took over his business, even though she didn't know about it. And I remember when he died, men from my dad, he had a modest real estate, he owned some buildings, came in and said to her, "Don't worry, Margot, we'll run the business and take care of you." And she said, "No, you won't. You will teach me how to run the business and I will take care of my family." So this idea of never being a victim, never feeling sorry for yourself, learning the work and doing the work is what nourished me every single day. Now, not having mentors is kind of an advantage because you could be yourself. You never had to worry about, am I doing the right thing? Because there was no one to judge you. If people called me Sherry and they called everybody else Mr. So-and-so, that was just the way I did it, Similarly, the loss, and I really want to comment on this, that statement, there was only room for one at the table, unfortunately was true. And so women in the industry at the time of my life, and I really want to say how it's changed, we didn't get close with one another because we were frightened. We were frightened that, well, if I tell you this, then maybe you'll get the job. And until there was a critical mass of us who were getting the jobs, only until then did we realize that a success for one was a success for all. And we should cheer that on. So my early girlfriends, of which I had many, had nothing to do with the business, nothing. But and some of them, you know, were not career women, but they were my soulmates, you know. Mm-hmm. As women rose in the business, I became really close friends with a lot of women in the business. And we always say, God, we missed so much in the early years. But today, when I go to women in film events or an event like this, the bond between women is what makes me so excited. They're best friends. I have two girlfriends who are both running. One's running a studio, one's running a streaming thing. They're best friends. You know, they're constantly saying, this project wasn't for me, maybe you'd like it. And that's how the world has changed. The sisterhood of women, this idea of not being competitive, this idea that there's room for all of us at the table, is to me one of the things that I'm happiest about, proudest that I've seen. And at this point, and I'd say for the last 25 years of my life, my girlfriends in and out of the business have nourished me, have sustained me, and without which I couldn't exist. So I think.
Yeah. I loved reading about that part of your biography, that sort of discovering those women around you and becoming close to them was really a beautiful part of it. Because as a woman in this industry, or just as a woman in the world, female friendship has come really late to me. It's not something that I had as a younger woman. And I have to say, this business is something that actually helped foster that. And I was going to ask you, Annette, I saw you nodding when I was talking about guilelessness and not being as afraid as you should be. But I also know from my own experience that in choosing projects, fear is also really important and sometimes really healthy. Because if I'm afraid of something, I know it's challenging. I know it's something that I probably should do. So I wanted to know if you could speak a little bit to that relationship between fear and confidence in navigating this world that you've been in, you know, with great success. And also maybe speak a little bit to that idea of, you know, this feeling that this business is supposed to be so competitive between women, because again, there are so many actresses and so few roles for us to play. But like I said, I have found those relationships really supportive and fulfilling in the projects I've done. I haven't felt that kind of energy coming from other women. And in fact, the women I've worked with have become some of the most important women in my life. So let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with that. Those bonds are so essential. First of all, impulsivity and just sort of jumping in with a certain amount of naivete is kind of still how I operate. It's like I say yes, and then I figure out what I'm doing afterwards, which isn't always the best way to do life. I've gotten myself into some trouble, but generally it is kind of my impulse. And so I have had to sort of figure out things then once I got myself into the pool that I've jumped in. And I believe in that. And I try to remember to always say that to people who are starting out, that, you know, it's okay to make an irrational choice based on some gut feeling you have, or based on who you fell in love with, or who you broke up with, or what you read, or whatever that thing is. It's an irrational thing that is very powerful and necessary. Fear and insecurity, yeah, that's such a big subject, isn't it? It's so important for creative people. We have to understand that that's where we live. And when I was younger, I thought, oh, there's a point as an actress maybe, or as any kind of creative person, where you sort of arrive and you no longer feel that thing. Well, now I understand. It took me a while to get to that understanding. So now I do understand it better. Mm-hmm. And when I'm interested in doing something, generally that is the other component in it, which is that kind of gnawing feeling. And you don't ever really get over that, because you have to learn to live with it. I remember there was an actress that I met many years ago, 30 plus years ago, named Fabia Drake, who was an English actress. And she called it, and I think she's quoting someone else, divine discontent.
So there's a divinity to that thing where you're not settled and you're not sure. And I think that that's why I've done a lot of the things that I've done in the work that I have. But every day it's there. And especially with things that are more demanding. And I used to think, oh, well, it's my job to get away from it or something. Now I feel more like I just say to myself, I am afraid. I'm nervous. Will I be able to come up with it? In the theater, the discipline, as you know, Carrie, the theater is profound, trying to do 8 shows a week. And in the movies, it's the moment. Because there's trucks and hundreds of people and all of this equipment and all this stuff. And then it starts to get quieter and quieter and quieter as it's like, quiet, everybody. Okay. And then they put the camera on you. That's scary. Anybody who's not scared of that, I don't know. I have seen people that didn't seem like they were scared, but we all handle it in different ways. So yeah, it's not a question of getting away from it.
Right.
Can I add something for a second? Because I realized I sort of didn't answer the question. I sort of want to build on what Annette was saying. I think everybody has fear, and people who do something, it's about overcoming their fear. I, much like Annette, chose movies. I don't know if you read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Through the Blink Theory. It was something that touched me and touched me in my stomach. And then I always had to justify the cost and the cast and was it right, whatever. But I want to go back because, people always look at you and say, oh, you have, oh, look at Annette. She's so confident. She takes all these risks. Look at you, Carrie, whatever. The truth is I had crippling insecurity when I grew up, crippling. I mean, really an amazing lack of self-esteem. And I realized that was really holding me back. It wasn't just overcoming fear like a little, it was really, really holding me back. I just didn't think I was worth much. And I really had this crippling lack of self-esteem. And I went into therapy. And I actually think that therapy saved my life because, they say it's, changing the habits of a lifetime and really confronting those demons. They don't go away, but you know what they are and you don't let them stop you. You can wake up one morning and you're confident. And then I always say, I wake up the next morning and there's that 12-year-old on my shoulder who's going, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do that. Only I understand it now. And it doesn't stop me. I just go, oh, there it is again, that 12-year-old riding with me to work. Oh, there it is, that 12-year-old who's intimidated to meet so-and-so or intimidated to do this and this. And then I have the tools now. And the tools were from therapy. I'm not suggesting that that's for everybody, a church, a best friend, whatever it is. But everybody has some lack of self-esteem, I believe, unless I have never met them. And they have to overcome it. So that's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely. That leads me to a very selfish question that I have. When I was in college, I remember I came home and my grandma was talking to this guy on the phone. It was a man who'd been widowed and he'd been calling her all the time. And she finally said to him, I'm so sorry. I don't have the energy for this conversation today. And she hung up. And she turned to me and she said, Carrie, if you can learn to say no now, you will be so far ahead of me because it's taken me 70 years. And that was a profound moment in my life because I realized I was such a people pleaser. I was such a type A student. I was a good girl. And a good student isn't necessarily a good artist. And I learned a lot from that moment. And it took me many, many years and I'm still figuring it out. And so I wanted to ask you both about that. If you've learned to say no, and I know, Sherry, you're actually known for saying no in a remarkably empathetic, and people walk out of your office being rejected in the most gracious way, and it's an art. And everybody in your book is quoted speaking about that art that you have. So that's a skill I'm very curious about. But I'm wondering about when you learned to say no, or when you learned about setting boundaries, or if maybe you haven't. Both of you, sorry.
Sherry, I think you should go first.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the easy no. There's a great deal of separation in my life between me as a executive or as a producer than me as a person in my personal relationships. And they've always been separated. And I feel more confident in my work decisions than my personal decisions, you know, which is weird, but it's just a fact. And so when people say that I was empathetic and saying no, I started out as an actress being rejected in sometimes the most cruel way. And it hurt me so much. And I remember that pain. And then as a producer, trying to get a movie made that, you know, it took us, I think 26 people turned down Fatal, 26 people turned down, directors turned down Fatal Attraction, 32 turned down The Accused. So rejection was painful. So when someone comes in with their prized possession, almost like a child, and would hand me a script or want to do a part, I empathized with them. I knew what they were feeling. So my desire to be kind, and I think kindness is one of the most underrated virtues in the world. You can be kind and you can be strong. They're not mutually exclusive. My desire to be kind in saying no to somebody was just born of experience that I empathized and identified with them. So that was, it was an instinct. And also, I would always say to people, and it's true, just because I'm saying no doesn't mean I'm right. You'll be laughing about this 2 years ago when the movie wins the Academy Award and talking about what an idiot I was. And that's also true, because you're wrong as much as you're right. In my personal life, my ability to say no is a work in progress. And that's all I can say. And I work at it every day. I often call it the tyranny of the weak, that I am so afraid of offending someone, so afraid of hurting someone, that I spend endless hours where I'm not getting anything from it. And COVID, and I'm really not, and I'm not sure they are either. But COVID has been my inspiration. I know this sounds so weird to say, but in COVID, of course we all could say no. I'm sorry, I can't go out. You know, I'm very risk averse. I'm sorry, I could get the disease. So I spent a year in COVID only seeing people that I loved, a very small group. And I spent a year in COVID only doing what I wanted to do, you know, and I am determined to take that into the rest of my life. I am determined to not waste time. And I've already failed at it in the first month, but I'm trying so hard. But I don't know how to say when someone says to me, God, I haven't seen you for, a year and a half and I'm vaccinated and anytime that's good for you is good for me. I don't know how to say no. So I'm still working on it. I do know how to make it shorter. I do know how to do that, but I don't know if it's a flaw. I just can't, I can't live when I think that I have offended somebody unnecessarily or hurt someone unnecessarily. I don't want to ever be cruel. I'm not a saint, believe you me. I'm capable of doing some very strong and tough things, but I'm really working hard at saying no more in my personal life. I'd say I'm not even halfway there in my personal life. In my professional life, it's easy. I'm thrilled to be doing this. This is something I wanted to do, but if I hadn't wanted to do it, I would have said no. So I am a dichotomy.
Thank you for joining us.
No, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here. This is an easy yes.
Great. It's for a good cause. Annette, saying no, setting boundaries.
Yeah, I when you were just talking about yourself, Carrie, by the way, that answer was so genius from Sherry. What do I have to add except just to say to Carrie, I relate to what you said about being a people pleaser. And as an actress, we've all gone into auditions like Sherry's saying and experienced a lot of rejection. In terms of the work, and learning how to express myself and my opinions about the material, that did take me a long time. I would look at a piece of material. I was hired as an actress. I looked at the script and I thought, there's that section right there. I don't think that quite works. But I just wouldn't say anything because I feel like, all the men are there. They're all making the decisions. They're the writers, they're the directors, they're the lead. And so I would think, well, I won't say anything because that's not really my job. And then I would watch the movie and I would think, oh my God, I was right. That section isn't up to snuff. So over the years, I have learned to speak up more, and I try to do it with humility and say, look, I just have to be honest. I think this section isn't quite where it needs to be. And maybe I have a suggestion and maybe I don't. It's easy to see what's not working. It's not so easy to make the comment that fixes it. And I'm aware of that. So I do think that for me personally in the business, that's helped a lot. I think there were times I also avoided conflict in order to maintain personal relationships on a set. I think about that more in terms of movies than plays. And do I regret that? I don't know. But I for sure did that, where I would be reluctant to get involved in a problem or a conflict, and I would avoid it. Perhaps now I just do it differently. And I often find myself in the mediator role where there's a conflict between people and I'm the one that everyone's coming to, and somehow I'm there and helping everyone get along. Maybe it's because I'm a mom and I've got 4 kids. I don't know. By the way, it doesn't work. You can't do it. It's that's another fallacy that you can make everybody get along. But I'm still dealing with having to accept that. So I'll just kind of leave that there.
Yeah, that's I'm a middle child. I can totally relate to that. I'm always mediating everything. In the speaking to some of the issues that have come up in your answers to these questions, I've been thinking a lot about how the pandemic has forced unprecedented numbers of women out of the workforce still. Though we have achieved sort of more egalitarian marriages in some ways, and there's more balance in the household, and there's different blended families now. We still see women taking the burden of that. And I'm wondering if you could speak to, Sherry, you became a mother by marriage. Annette, you have 4 children. I'm about to have my second child at 40, so in a couple of weeks. And I'm wondering, when you were trying to achieve a work-life balance in a time when women were still working very hard to carve out these careers at all, are there things that you thought you did well? And are there things that you thought you did really terribly or are still doing? Things you might change?
So I'm going to say a very controversial thing, and probably everyone's going to leap on me. And I'm also going to correct it, okay? Because there's been so much progress. When I was growing up, I don't think you could have had it all. And I know everybody leaps on me, okay? Because I wanted a career very, very, very much. I wanted to make movies very, very much. And then I wanted a relationship, however you define it. It didn't have to be marriage. It could be a partner, but I wanted intimacy in my life. And I felt that I couldn't have, if I had those 2 things, I know you're going to leap on me, so please disagree with me. I felt I couldn't have children because I felt that at the time, there were no daycare centers. So let's remember this time. I felt like I would feel like everyone was pulling at me in all directions, and I couldn't be the kind of mother I wanted to be because I would be at this, working 12 hours a day. My partner was working 12 hours a day. And so I felt that I couldn't have it all. And I felt that life was about choices. And I'm extremely comfortable and happy and have no regret for the choices I made in terms of not having biological children. But then one day I said this at some conference and some man raised his hand. I'll never forget this. And he said to me, well, what if your husband was home? What if he was, sharing the burden? And I said, yes, then I could have had children, and that's how the world changed, not just because of COVID. It changed because of the women's movement. It changed because of all the things that happened, so that men, a man who says, I'm a stay-at-home mother, I'm raising the children, is very respected, at least in my world, and very admired. And thereby, a lot of the career women that I know have that. A lot have the ability to have help, but it is a constant juggle. I don't regret my decisions at all, but I got very lucky. So this is the question I'll never know the answer to. I married my husband, Billy. He has the two most wonderful children in the entire world. I got to be a mother. I don't consider myself a stepmother, a shared mother with their biological mothers. And they were 9, and 15. So it was like such a gift. Would I sit back now? I'll never know the answer. Will I sit back now if I didn't have that in my life and say, boy, I regret that? I don't know. But I am comfortable with the choices that I made. I don't think the world was unfair. I had friends who didn't make those choices and juggled. At the time, if I had said to any one of my bosses, and I had great bosses, look, I won't be here at 3:00 because I'm going to my son's soccer game. They'd have said, that's great. Leave at 3, but don't ever come back again. I mean, that would have been the world. So again, I started this by saying my age, because I know some of what I'm saying, especially to the younger people, are going, what are you talking about? My God, we have daycare centers. We get to take time off. Thank God. But thank Gloria Steinem, thank Betty Friedan, people that people don't talk about enough, who fought for these rights that we all have. And thank the men, because, there's so many men that I adore and love who are stay-at-home, parents, and that's great. So I hope it's not too controversial, because I think the hardest job in the entire world is being a mother. So I just want to say that. I think there's nothing harder, and I'm very grateful that I have it. But I didn't become a quote mother until I was 47, and I had an established career by then. And then I could say, because I was the boss, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to the soccer game of my kids. And they would go, fine. It was like,
you're the boss.
So we could set those rules. We had the best daycare center at Paramount. It won every award. Everybody's kids were there, whatever.
Yeah. So. Yeah, interesting. Annette?
Well,
the exact opposite, and you did it all. So you better say that. You have great kids, great husband, you did it all. And I couldn't have. I'm just being honest. That may be my fault.
I hear what you're saying. I think what you're saying is really important, and it's a generational issue. Anne Morrow Lindbergh wrote a great book, Motherhood. I can't remember the entire title, but she basically talked about what you're talking about, and how my mom is now 92. It's amazing. I admire her enormously. And she was a homemaker. She was there. I'm one of 4 kids. And when I was very, very little, I knew I wanted to be a mom from when I was like a little girl. And so I don't quite know where that came from. I think it had to do with a number of things, but whatever. I wanted to be a mom, and I always knew that. I knew that before I knew I wanted to be in the theater or be an actress or anything. So I sort of followed that instinct that I had. But sort of how that unfolded didn't feel quite as organized as maybe Sherry is able to present. I knew that that's what I wanted. I didn't know exactly how it was going to happen. And then once what you said, Carrie, earlier about some ways we're alike in that maybe you didn't start doing movies and TV until you were older. I didn't do a movie till I was almost 30. So I had my 20s where I was working in the theater and doing other stuff, and mostly just doing plays. So by the time I got into doing film was when I started having children. And I figured out that actually it was much better for an actress. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but the day-to-day schedule of being on a set is in some ways more manageable than going to the theater. And the first time I did a play when my kids were, I hadn't done a play in so many years, I was shocked because I never thought I would always just do plays, but then I did Hedda Gabler here in Los Angeles. And, I've always been obsessed with Ibsen. All of us who grew up in the theater generally go through that, especially as women, because he was such a great writer. and I did the play, and then, oh my God, you have to leave in the late afternoon when your children are getting home, you're up late. I tried to do the thing of staying up late and then getting up early with my kids in the morning. Wow, that lasts for a while, but then that next show, about halfway through Act 2, you're like, whoa, I don't know if I have the emotional and the physical energy to do that. So that's just kind of a sliver of a subject in terms of our profession. But it was.
We lost you.
Oh, what happened? Annette, come back.
I know. Sorry, I don't know what happened. That was my computer. Anyway, I think it was because I really didn't have anything more to say. No.
You were so great in Hedda Gabler. I saw that. I just have to say that you were sort of, but I think the acting career gives you more flexibility in a funny way.
It's true. It's true. And I know that about my friends who are executives or lawyers or, professional women in that way. So I felt very lucky because I could stop and start, which I did many times. I would stop and just not work for a couple of years. Or, I didn't go away. If I did go away, it was in the summer and I took my kids with me. So it's all imperfect, it's all kind of a mess, but that's the chaos in somewhat of artistic lives. They have a certain chaotic nature to them. But I think overall it worked out pretty well. But there's also the fact is that since I'm a public person, I don't really share a lot of my own life. And that's been my choice. I've done to a degree, but there's a lot of what happened and what is happening that I just don't speak about. So I always feel like the image that I can sometimes project is actually not really what's going on, but that's my choice because I don't want to share my personal life and, what I'm going through, what my kids go through, my husband, etc.
Someone said to me once, and then I'll stop. No. You can't have it all, but you can have it all sequentially, which is, I thought, another interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, that is interesting. Believe it or not, we're actually coming to the end of our time. Which is, I could do this all day long. We should just have a private Zoom. Meanwhile, we had some guests submit questions, and I don't even have time for all of them, so I'm going to try to scrunch them together a little bit. You guys have spoken a lot, you women have spoken a lot to this idea of you sort of occur in the world as these very self-possessed women, but I feel like you've spoken a lot to sort of the underlying insecurities and fears of that. We have a woman who submitted a question that she's transitioning out the sale of her business, and she's looking for guidance on approaching a new chapter. And so I wanted to say, let's talk about maybe starting over, having a second act a little bit later in life. And maybe in the mix with that, you can address the question about an industry where we're typically expected to age out, right? Hollywood, we're sort of aging out of Hollywood, but that doesn't seem to be the case as much anymore. And so if you could address second acts, aging out, what success means at this stage in your lives.
You know what, I can jump in just to say what I'm discovering within myself and a lot of my friends, and Sherry, I think, already really touched on this, is that at this stage of life, my search, and maybe this connects to this woman who asked this question, is really for freedom. It's for inner freedom and artistic freedom. I mean, it's always been there, but now I think because my children are older, and because I'm older, I have a different perspective about what that means. Many of my friends, and I so just want to echo what you've been talking about in terms of female bonding and my friendships and what they mean to me. They always have been, and certainly now. It's kind of the lifeblood of my life in a way, is my connection to my friends who are in many, many different professions. And that there is this moment that happened with many of them, and I feel it within myself, where it's this sort of second emergence as a woman when you're older, because you're free of a lot of the things that you are more concerned with when you're younger. And so this idea of starting a new business, of emerging into this other chapter of life, there's enormous energy in that. With that comes discipline, but that's always the case, right? There's this weird connection between discipline and freedom. And like what you were saying, Sherry, about how when you went to work, you loved the work, you loved that plunging into the actual story, not all the other BS around you, but just the story itself. So it's that connecting to that feeling where, oh, no, I'm doing what I love. So I don't mind having to exert my own discipline over that impulse in order to get myself to the place of, oh my God, here I am. I'm doing what I love. So I really want to echo for that woman, whoever you are out there, that I applaud you. And this is what I think we're not kind of told enough as women, that, oh, wait, there's this chapter that happens when you get older that actually is very freeing. And there's enormous energy in it and inside of us.
So I love that too, Annette. I'll just amplify a little. I am a big believer in second acts or third acts or whatever you want to call them. I think, as you know, I left the movie industry when I was 60 to start a whole new chapter in philanthropy with my foundation. And it's the best thing I ever did. That's all I can say. I can say that for me, not for everybody, but for me, I felt like I was repeating myself. And, you know, the successful highs weren't as high and the lows weren't as low. And I was kind of losing my passion, but I really wasn't losing my passion. My passion was going someplace else. So I made this desire that by the time I turned 60, I was going to leave the business and start my own foundation, which is something that I was obsessively passionate about. Excuse me. And I chose 60 because 60 is young enough to have another chapter, but not so young that you can wait. So my advice to this woman is leap. You know, put your toe in a lot of areas, see what you like, and then leap. You can always change your mind. You can always do something else. But what happened to me, excuse me, I'm just gonna have a little water.
Me too.
What happened to me is when I left the business, I felt like I had graduated college. I felt younger than I've ever felt. I felt more curious than I've ever felt. I was learning new things every day. For me, it was science. I'm bad at science. Doctors were explaining to me what a stem cell was, how cancer is doing this, whatever. And it was, I think, the key to successful aging is, you know, the Harvard Business School says every 10 years you're supposed to repot yourself. That doesn't mean you would leave acting. It just means you would take different acting challenges. Doesn't mean my husband will direct till the day he dies, but he'll take different challenges. He's directing some operas now. He never did that before. But if you don't do that, if you just keep in a safe place, you'll get bored, but you also won't be curious. And there's a whole new world that opened up to me.
Mm-hmm.
Success to me now is never has been and never will be based on material things, and never will be based on outer rewards, you know, a good review. It's all about how I feel about what I've done. And for me, I think success for me, how I measure my life, is by human intimacy and work. So work is always important to me. It sustains me. And human intimacy, my family and close friendships. And that's where, besides work, I get the greatest pleasure in life. And, you know, if I feel a connection, those connections at this time in my life, as Annette said, are more important than anything that has ever existed. Mm-hmm. And finally, because I know you asked the third question, age for women, it's never been better. When I was growing up, man, you were 40, that was it. Thank goodness for Netflix, Hulu, all these things, that, because I can't say it's as good in the industry yet, but it will be when they start to realize that, you know, I've been going to movies since I was, 16 years old or 14 years old. I didn't stop, when I turned 70. So now they're starting to realize this enormous audience of adults, but also women's hearts and the thing that women directors, and of course, the women's movement, and of course, all the movements, Black Lives Matter, everything has increased diversity. And now some of the greatest parts and some of the greatest things I have ever seen, of which I sampled every single one in COVID, and I'm completely addicted to my streaming services as well as feature films, the parts are exceptional. So it's almost going back to that time when, you know, Barbara Stanwyck and all those actresses were there and they carried films. So I'm really, really optimistic that we're redefining aging, which is, I think, the last bastion of civil rights, because the prejudice toward aging was just enormous. And here we are, you know, this isn't about politics, but, you know, with a president of a certain age, here we are admiring so many actresses that are in their 80s and they're doing series and everything. So I see a very bright future.
That's a great place to leave it. Yeah, I mean, I see the expansion too of just room for all these voices for women, non-binary, and we're just seeing room for everybody at the table, and it's a really exciting time. This has been so personally satisfying to me. I can't even tell you. I hope, like I say, that this isn't the end of this conversation, that it gets to continue. And I'm so grateful to both of you for joining us today. It's deeply meaningful to us that you agreed to do this and that you're our friends. And this is as Tracy would say, this is the stuff. The education stuff at Steppenwolf is where we really place our value, and we're so grateful to you. And of course, all of our host committee and our sponsors. Don't forget to text WIA to 76278 to help us get up to our $250,000 goal. It's been great to be with all of you listeners at our 11th annual Women's Luncheon. I hope we see you in person next year. We're very proud of the work we do here to lift all voices and lift all boats. And we're really grateful to you for your generous support and for keeping our theater alive through a pandemic. We really wouldn't be here without you, truly. And so come and see me. I'm back on stage in Bug. I'll be breastfeeding, so that'll be interesting. Meanwhile, we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day and that you enjoyed our conversation here. And we hope to see you in the theater. Thank you so much, Sherry and Annette.
Thanks. Thank you. It was so much fun and such a pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You were great. Thank you. It was great. Great fun.